Good day from Washington. I am Marvin Kell.
I'm Roger Mudd.
And we welcome you to another edition of this special political series, Meet the Press, Decision 84. We're focusing today on the polls and the political opinion experts, the people who tell us what we are thinking and why, whom we prefer and why. Our guests today are George Gallup Jr., who was picked up where his father left off, polling us on politics and increasingly on religion, and William Schneider, a resident fellow at the American Enterprise Institute, a prolific specialist in public opinion and behavior. Our weekly feature, an NBC News analysis of state-by-state polling on the critical electoral vote count. Our polls show the country turning blue, adding to the 28 states solidly for President Reagan last week. 5 more have now swung into his column: Arkansas, Georgia, Michigan, Mississippi, and Missouri. That's 33 states solid, 320 electoral votes, more than enough to win, and 8 others are set to be leaning in his direction. As for his Democratic challenger, Walter Mondale, once again, only the District of Columbia, but in 9 states with 117 electoral votes, he has a chance. Hawaii, Iowa, Maryland, Massachusetts, Minnesota, New York, Oregon, Pennsylvania, and Rhode Island. Once again, Roger, these estimates could be dead wrong. The people have not yet voted. But in the electoral vote count, the president seems to be holding his own, and in some areas, in fact, adding to the strength he has.
Marvin, it seems just like last Sunday on Meet the Press when Jim Johnson, Mondale's campaign manager, was here and told us we've got 6 weeks, just you watch. But now there's just 1 week, very little time, and virtually every public opinion poll in the country indicates that a Mondale victory would be the greatest upset since Truman whipped Dewey in '48. In fact, Truman's last-minute swing through the Farm Belt was very much on Mondale's mind this week.
And quietly, by the thousands and then by the millions, rural Americans with dignity went to the polls, and they voted old Harry Truman back in that White House.
But confident as he might be, President Reagan has not let up in his attacks on Mondale, using lines that belittle his opponent.
If I could find a way to dress up in his tax program, I could scare the devil out of people on Halloween.
So by the end of the week, and with the poll showing Reagan well ahead, Mondale then attacked the carrier of the bad news. He attacked the polls themselves.
The pundits and the pollsters are telling you that it's over. Your vote doesn't count. Forget it. Stay home. Public opinion polls don't vote. The people vote, and the people are corrupt.
Mr. Gallup, you heard him say it. Walter Mondale now says the polls are wrong, his crowds are big, his spirits are up. Is there something going on out in the country that you and Mr. Schneider and the pundits don't know about?
Well, first of all, of course, polls don't predict. They reflect interviewing at the period of interviewing only. But there are certain factors that could operate to bring the race closer, and one has to review earlier presidential years to see that a lot of votes have changed in the last few days, actually, and certainly 1980, certainly 1948, 1968, Hubert Humphrey made a tremendous run toward the presidency, and the closing, actually that was the closing month, and then again in 1956 a lot of votes went toward Eisenhower in the closing days. So the race isn't over, certainly, even though it's only a little more than a week, and a lot of things have happened going back over the last 25 or 30 years.
Mr. Schneider, do you think something's going on in the country, some last-minute movement for Mondale that is not yet detectable?
Well, there was a change after the October 7th debate, but the figure to keep in mind is that President Reagan's job approval ratings, which are the central issue in this election, have remained about the same for almost a year now. They really haven't changed. The election this year, as it is in any year, is a referendum on the performance of the incumbent. In 1980, Carter's approval ratings were down in the 30s, and there were a lot of people who did not want to see Jimmy Carter get reelected, and it was only at the last minute after the debate that they thought Ronald Reagan was a plausible alternative. But this year, there seems to be a solid majority, about 55%, who do think President Reagan should be reelected, and that hasn't budged for about a year.
Do you think, Mr. Schneider, that the American electorate is so settled and so anxious for stability that it would take something really cataclysmic in the last week or 8 days to turn it around?
I imagine so. It would probably take a serious error on the part of the president or the administration. I would imagine that Mondale can't win it at this point, but Reagan could lose it. What could he plausibly say or do? Well, Secretary of State Shultz's speech this week on terrorism made a lot of people nervous about what the administration might be planning. President Reagan could say something both foolish and dangerous. For instance, the United States is prepared to fight and win a nuclear war. He didn't say that in the debate last week, but if that were to happen, I think that could turn things around.
Mr. Gallup, what do you judge to be Ronald Reagan's hold on the American people?
Well, the driving force in this election is clearly the economy. Going back 50 years of scientific polling, the two issues of peace and prosperity have controlled virtually all elections. And so the economy is certainly going in his favor. Financial optimism is at a high point over the last 5 years. The mood of the country is brighter than it's been in 7 years, and largely because of economic factors. So that's clearly the driving force in his own personal popularity, which does translate to a standing in trial heats, of course.
And yet there is some evidence that, that many Americans agree with Mondale on the issues.
Yes, that's very true.
So why is Mondale so far behind?
Well, actually, if on an issue basis alone, this would be a closer race.
It would.
Even though the president does have the lead here also, and he has the lead on the key issues of peace and prosperity. It's the personality factor, if you will, that makes the difference. And not that the president is enthusiastically greeted by the electorate. In fact, the amount of enthusiasm he generates now is about comparable to that given Presidents Nixon and Carter and Ford at comparable points in time. But he does generate considerably more enthusiasm than does his rival, Mondale, actually. So that's a factor. And he also has scores on perceived leadership abilities. He scores much higher than does his rival, actually.
We'll continue our questioning of Mr. Gallup and Mr. Schneider after these messages.
Meet the Press, the world's longest-running television program, is a presentation of NBC News. Meet the Press is sponsored by the Archer Daniels Midland Company, ADM, helping America use its abundance to meet the world's needs.
Take away the flour. Take away the sweeteners. Take away the vegetable oils and ingredients for livestock and poultry feeds, and a trip to the supermarket would be a pretty empty experience. At the Archer Daniels Midland Company, we make ingredients that are a part of all these foods, and hundreds more. So even though you don't see our name on your grocer's shelves, from now on, you'll know we're there.
You can't be calculating without a calculating mind.
Now what? I don't know, but they're doing it fast.
Canon's 350 makes 30 copies a minute.
They're doing it in color. The connivers.
Canon's 350 can zoom to precise image sizes and remember them.
They got it in sets already. Already? They're finished. If they're finished, we're finished.
Canon's NP350, the copier with the calculating mind. For more information, call toll-free 1-800-OK-CANON.
Mr. Schneider, just before we took a break, Mr. Gallup said that the enthusiasm quotient, if we can call it that, of Ronald Reagan is now at about the same as it was at this point for Nixon, Carter, and Ford. I find that hard to believe. I thought everywhere Reagan went, they went crazy over him.
Well, I think the personality factor is overstated in this election. Ronald Reagan is a very divisive president, more so than most presidents in modern times. And a lot of people deeply disagree with him. My feeling is that the enthusiasm for Reagan isn't so much personal. It's an indication of people's feeling about his performance. He has done what he was elected to do. He was elected to curb inflation. He was elected to restore the nation's sense of military security. Now, a lot of people disagree with the way he did those things, but there's very little disagreement that he's done them. And that's pretty much enough to satisfy the electorate.
I mean, just keeping promises is a big enough deal in America?
Well, we've had a succession of 4 failed presidencies in the United States, starting with Lyndon Johnson, Carter, Nixon, Ford. In one way or another, they were all failures. It's rather a welcome relief for Americans to see a president doing what he was elected to do.
We're talking mostly on the basis of what the polls have been able to pick up. Are you confident in the accuracy of your polling data?
Yes, absolutely.
Why is it?
In terms of, yes, go ahead.
No, well, I mean, you're confident in yours, but why is it at the same time that so many different pollsters come up with so many different results?
That's a reflection of a lot of things. In order to compare two different polling organizations' results, you have to have the same interviewing time, you have to have the same question, order of the same question, and very importantly, you have to use the same turnout scales. We are using the same turnout scale that we've developed over the years. And so I think those are part of the reason why you have these differences, actually. And I should make one more point, which I think is very important, that often poll results are reported in terms of a spread, a 20-point spread.
Right.
But it must be borne in mind that that really means a exchange of 10 percentage points in the vote. That spread, I think, exaggerates the difference between the candidates often, because if one goes up 10, the other has to go down 10, of course.
Well, you people have become the political gurus of our time. I mean, you're really telling us what we think. You're explaining why we think certain things, whom we prefer, etc. Aren't you robbing us all of the drama of our election? Why don't you give us back our election, Mr. Schneider?
We're not telling you, you're telling us.
Is
Let's
that
start
right?
with that, yes.
You really believe that what you're grasping at any point is a snapshot of reality?
Yeah, and it's an imperfect snapshot. There's no such thing, and here I would disagree with Mr. Gallup, there's no such thing as a fully authoritative poll. Polling is an art, not a science. It depends on how you ask the question. For instance, let me give you one simple example, very pertinent now. We don't know exactly who's going to vote on November 6th. We can predict and estimate in various ways. Pollsters can predict pretty well who the habitual non-voters are, people who never vote. But there's also a phenomenon of deliberate abstention. That hurt the Democrats very deeply in 1980. About a quarter of the voters who had voted for Jimmy Carter in 1976, they were not habitual non-voters, stayed home in 1980. It's very difficult to predict deliberate abstention.
Okay, but we have been living with weekly polls and monthly polls and even daily polls. And I'm just wondering, isn't there a better way? What do you think, Mr. Gallup?
Well, I think actually it's very important, I think, not only to measure the head-to-head kind of contest, but it's also to find out the big issues on the minds of voters. We have to explore the political dynamic in American life. And so I think it's very, very important. It's also important for another reason, too, because I think polls, at least election surveys, have been the acid test of a poll's methodology. And they are a very good way to show a sometimes skeptical public that survey work and polls can be exceedingly accurate if carefully done. Now, we're not claiming infallibility, so let me go back to what I'd said earlier, but I have full confidence that we've taken every step that we have based on experience to come up with a most accurate set of figures at the present time. Now, factors like turnout do change. There are a host of other factors that could change the picture indeed.
Mr. Gallup, do you and your researchers encounter resistance by Americans who say, oh God, it's you guys again, I'm sick and tired of this election, when's it going to be over?
Well, certainly the American people are jaded with the electoral process because it never seems to stop.
Not just this year.
No, it seems to be endless. But I think that people do respond favorably, by and large, to our interviewers. If the interviewer gains rapport, people know that it's very important to respond to surveys because they do reflect accurately the mood of the country. And so we encounter relatively little of that, even though people are jaded with the political race, for sure.
Do you think they're jaded, Mr. Schneider?
Well, I think they're jaded with the race. I'm not sure they're jaded with polls. The little secret of polling is that people enjoy talking about politics. They enjoy someone who pays attention to their opinions. It's an experience most people don't have. And they'll also reveal facts about their opinions and their views to a stranger that they'd never tell someone they really know.
The thing that's interesting to me is this war-peace issue, for example. Yeah. It seems as if the people are with Mondale on that, not so much with Reagan. Am I wrong? Right.
Our evidence suggests that President Reagan now has a distinct edge on that following the final debate. Up to that time, prior to the final debate, both parties and both candidates were seen about equal in their ability to keep the nation at peace, but it's moved more into the camp of the GOP side on the peace issue.
And why do you think that's the case, Mr. Schneider?
Well, I think it's the case because of the Reagan record. People were very apprehensive about his foreign policy tendencies in 1980, and there's been a real turnaround on that. Primarily, I believe, because he doesn't have a major foreign policy disaster on his record. And it's interesting that the public does not see Lebanon as comparable to Iran, even though many more American lives were lost in Lebanon. Iran is regarded still as a humiliation and a disgrace. Lebanon was certainly a failure, but it wasn't a disgrace because President Reagan cut costs when it was clear that our policies there weren't working. he pulled the troops out, which is something that no president did at the time of Vietnam.
Okay, we'll be back with more questions for George Gallup and William Schneider right after these messages.
Which computer company is making more room in the computer room? A company with the technology to build a computer system that's more powerful and more reliable than its older cousins, but a whole lot smaller. That company is NCR.
Hello? Your new computer's here.
Their computer's everything the big computers were, except big. Innovative computer technology. You can expect it from NCR.
Chrysler introduces the new technology of driving. Turbo New Yorker. Front-wheel drive, electronics to inform you. Chrysler Luxury to comfort you, and Turbo Power to move you. Turbo New Yorker. Once you drive it, you'll never go back to a V8 again. This is Chrysler's most technologically advanced luxury car, backed by the Chrysler Protection Plan. Turbo New Yorker by Chrysler. The best built, best backed American cars.
We are back with George Gallup and William Schneider. Mr. Gallup, on the question of youth being for Reagan, which a lot of people find rather remarkable, because here's the president who has cut student loans and is perceived to be not immediately sympathetic with their ideology, what young people think. Okay. Why is that the case?
I think there are a couple of factors. Mostly it's a male phenomenon among young people. They are much more pro-GOP than the girls or the women are among the 18 to 29-year-old group. And I think the economy is a big factor there, the trying to get a job and so forth. I think that's a key factor. And I think another observation that seems very valid to me is that the people in that age group have had only a very brief reference point historically, and that is of the Carter administration. And in the final days, it was perceived as not being very successful. I think those are two key factors. If you take the 18 to 24 group with girls, or women, excuse me, that is, actually you find that they are pretty well balanced between Mondale and Reagan, and I suggest that the War and Peace issue is playing a little greater importance in their thinking than it is with the males.
Mr. Schneider, could it be that being pro-prayer and pro-patriotism and pro-self-reliance is the new form of youthful rebellion?
Oh, I don't think so.
I've read that somewhere, and I had to read it 3 times before I thought someone would actually think that.
Actually, you find that the youngest voters, those 18 to 24, have the highest proportion of self-described liberals as well as strong support for President Reagan. They're not voting for him because they agree with his issue positions. I think they're voting for him, first of all, as Mr. Gallup said, because for them, the Great Depression wasn't in the 1930s. It was in the 1970s. That's when they entered the labor force, and it was a very dire prospect for those people. President Reagan's the first president to turn things around economically, and they appreciate it. Also, interestingly, though he's president of the United States, compared with Walter Mondale, President Reagan has an anti-establishment image. He still looks like a man who's going to shake things up in Washington, and Walter Mondale looks like the Ancien Regime. He looks like the way things always were. He decided to run an establishment campaign to show that he was a traditional Democrat, and that's just not very appealing to younger voters.
I've got to ask you, are you a Republican?
No.
Mr. Gallup? You?
No, I'm an independent.
You're an independent. Tell me about Jesse Jackson in the South. Do you feel that he is pushing normally Democratic white voters into the arms of the GOP?
I think in a very limited way, very limited way, right. No, and I think its effect has certainly been to increase turnout, obviously, among blacks and to vote against Reagan. I think that blacks would support many candidates other than Reagan. They want to get him out of office, actually, at this point.
Mr. Schneider, what do you think is bothering most Americans most of the time right now?
Not a great deal is bothering Americans right now. In fact, one of the best stories I know about this election was at a rally in Los Angeles where a woman turned to a reporter and said, "I don't know why we're having an election. We've got a president." That's the way a lot of Americans felt, and the Democrats have had some trouble engaging people on the issues. Again, it's the problem of performance. I think there's some apprehension about the future. The deficit issue is certainly symbolic of that. But Americans are doing now what they've always done in presidential elections. They are voting on the present. They're voting a referendum on the incumbent, and it looks pretty good.
What about Ferraro? What about the Ferraro factor, Mr. Schneider?
Well, the material I've seen suggests that while she has a positive image overall, The Republicans and independents who like her are still voting for Ronald Reagan. But there's some evidence that the Democrats who don't like her are leaving the ticket. So my guess is that she's probably not helping the Democratic ticket.
She's a negative factor in your view?
I think a net negative factor, yes.
Mr. Gallup, you agree with that?
You've caught me between surveys. We have some findings coming in later this week, but I can't answer that.
I got a signal from Mr. Gallup that he did not agree with Mr. Schneider's declaration that there's not much bothering Americans now.
Yeah, I very definitely
disagree.
Yes, absolutely. Half the country is satisfied with the way things are going in the country, and this is the highest point in 7 years, at least since we've taken that measurement. 5 years, excuse me. Half, and that's way up from the 12%, which we recorded at one point, but that means the other half are not satisfied. And there are a whole host of issues that are very upsetting to Americans. There is great concern over hunger on the part of among certain groups in the populace. Half of all non-whites say there was a time in the last 12 months when they did not have enough money to buy food or medical supplies or clothing. I think the division of the issues between the two candidates indicates that there are a lot of issues that are going against the administration, really, because on an issue basis, to repeat, I think this would be a much closer race, actually.
Then what is the difference? What are we then dealing with? If it's not issues, we're dealing with what? Just personality?
No.
Well, we're dealing somewhat with the economy, because that is helping to a considerable extent. So that is an issue, of course, that is helping.
And you mentioned peace before.
And that is a big issue, and that's one of the two biggest issues, and the peace is the other big issue at this present time, too. Incumbency certainly is a very important factor, and perceived leadership abilities on the part of the president, they're perceived as being greater in his case than in the case of Mondale, and a somewhat higher enthusiasm quotient, if you will. I think those are all certainly working on his side.
Mr. Schneider, can I ask you a quick question? Which came first, the abortion busing prayer issues or the political growth of the Protestant evangelical movement?
Well, the Republicans like to indicate, and I think it's correct, that the abortion prayer issues were put on the agenda by the Supreme Court, by the Democrats who changed those laws or outlawed traditional laws in those areas, and that the evangelical right became active in politics largely to resist those changes in national laws.
Mr. Schneider, Mr. Gallup, thank you both very much for being our guests on Meet the Press. Roger and I will be back after these messages.
Over the years, a lot of small businesses have developed their own systems of communicating.
Yes, sir. Eric, talk to
But
Derek.
now there's a better way. Meet the Merlin system from AT&T. Merlin's a telephone, an intercom, a conference caller, and has dozens of features you can select.
Henderson.
So Merlin can grow as your small business grows. Call about Merlin. AT&T Information Systems, when you've got to be right.
Now, yesterday we were talking about food. Today we're going to talk about where it comes from. Does anybody know? Jill?
It comes from the grocery store.
Well, yes, but before that, anybody else? Andy?
Food comes from the farmers who grow it, and all the other people who help turn it into the food that we eat every day.
Okay.
That's not all. Did you know
Agriculture is something we can all be proud of. It's America's biggest industry, with assets equal to 70% of those of all the manufacturing corporations in the country. It's also our largest employer. 1 of every 5 workers, over 23 million people, help put food on our tables. And American agriculture is the most productive system of its kind in the world. Not only do we spend less for food than any other country on earth, we also produce enough surplus each year to export over $30 billion worth of food and feed ingredients.
That's very good. How do you know so much about food?
Well, my dad's a great teacher. Hey, Tammy! Hey, Dad!
Food is so abundant and so affordable in this country that we often take it for granted. Fortunately, a lot of other people don't.
Roger, you know, every time one thinks about just what are the components in this campaign, I sometimes have the feeling that for the president it's been a succession of one-liners. Remember last summer he came up on the issue of bombing the Russians and he said, "We begin bombing in 5 minutes." Then last Sunday on the age issue he had that great gag, "I don't want to take advantage of my opponent's youth and inexperience," and everybody laughed. On the question of sharing the most sensitive, super sophisticated military technology with the Soviet Union, the president said, "Why not?" And everybody laughed. And one could almost imagine what would have happened if Walter Mondale had said, "Let's share all of our very sophisticated military technology with the Soviet Union." The president would have been all over him. So what is remarkable in all of this, the jokes keep on coming, people keep on laughing, and that seems to be enough.
Well, there were a couple of one-liners we haven't heard in a long time. The best one-liner of this campaign, Reagan used a couple of months ago, and the line was, "We celebrate July 4th, they celebrate April 15th." It's a terrific line, devastating line.
Tax day.
That's right, has no answer really for it, and I haven't heard it. The other one-liner that I haven't heard lately is the one Mondale used in San Francisco. "Mr. Reagan will raise taxes and so will I. He won't tell you I just did." And you haven't heard that, and there's a good reason for not having heard it.
Roger, in the last week, Mondale, as you said before, he's been coming on stronger. He seems more articulate. The crowd seem more enthusiastic. What's driving this man at this point, if these pollsters are right and he hasn't a monkey's uncle's chance?
Well, you do hear a lot of people say it's all over, why doesn't he quit? I think one could call it vanity. I think to be kind, you ought to call it pride. Mondale's a proud man. He's a proud Minnesota heritage, socially conscious Protestant tradition. And I think pride in his own party and what he believes in. I think he's convinced that Reagan is trifling with the people by not discussing the issues. That's what drives him, is his own pride.
Well, that's it for now. Thank you all for joining us. I am Arvin Cal with Roger Mudd saying goodbye from Meet the Press. Hope to see you next Sunday.
For a printed transcript of Meet the Press, send $1 and a stamped self-addressed envelope to Kelly Press, Box 8648, Washington, D.C. 20011. Meet the Press has been sponsored by the Archer Daniels Midland Company, ADM, helping America use its abundance to meet the world's needs. Tonight on the NBC Nightly News with John Palmer, more on U.S. involvement in a secret military buildup in Central America. It's crunch time for OPEC's oil ministers. Tomorrow morning on Today, find out what OPEC's miseries mean to you. News features timely interviews, weather and sports reports, and unique entertainment. They're all part of the Today program every weekday morning. Start your day with us on Today, right here on NBC. This is Maury Higdon. Meet the Press is a presentation of NBC News and has come to you live from our studios in Washington, D.C.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.